I'm going to share with you a few seconds of something I'd like to call words of wisdom, but I want you to think about what is being said, okay? I want you to think about what is being said. In fact, what I might do, I might just simply share, repeat what is being said twice, so that you grasp what is being said. It's so important that I want to repeat it. So please take a listen to what this elderly gentleman is saying. I think, and these are definitely words of wisdom here.
People talk glibly about science. What is science? People coming out of a university with a master's degree or a PhD, you take them into the field, and they literally don't believe anything unless there's a peer-reviewed paper. It's the only thing they accept. And you say to them, but let's observe, let's think, let's discuss. They don't do it. It's just, is it in a peer-reviewed paper or not? That's their view of science. I think it's pathetic. Gone into universities as bright young people. They come out of them brain dead, not even knowing what science means. They think it means peer-reviewed papers, etc. No, that's academia. And if a paper is peer-reviewed, it means everybody thought the same, therefore they approved it. An unintended consequence is that when new knowledge emerges, new scientific insights, they can never, ever be peer-reviewed. So we're blocking all new advances in science that are big advances. If you look at the breakthroughs in science, almost always they don't come from the center of that profession. They come from the fringe. The finest candle makers in the world couldn't even think of electric lights. They don't come from within. They often come from outside the breaks. We're going to kill ourselves because of stupidity.
Very interesting, very, very, very interesting thoughts there from this older gentleman. I think there are words of wisdom. I think this is true not only of science. I think this is true of every other subject of learning. So I thought I'd just share that with you as we enter into something that I'd like to share. My topic this morning is maybe a little strange, and the title of my talk is The Secret That Has Been Guarded by Lies. Very interesting. The secret that has been guarded by lies. Now, I've been doing a lot of searching recently, and it is amazing what I'm finding out. I have realized, and those of you who have heard me in my uncensored arena, would recognize that I do have questions about many things, right? Isn't that true? And so I do question many different things, and because just certain things just doesn't add up, and I believe I ought to get to the root of certain things, getting to understand for myself. It's not for you; it's for myself. So it is sometimes dangerous. Honestly, it is sometimes dangerous to do research, to search things out, and to compare what you're finding out with what you have been taught. There will always be conflicts, which will bring challenges. So let me just say at the beginning here that I just like for you to hear me out and to understand the perspective that I'm sharing, where I'm coming from. Before you put a blockage, before you block your brain, your mind, just give me a listening ear as we look at something that I deem to be very important to many and to myself as well. There is a verse in the book of Proverbs. It's an interesting verse in Proverbs 18 and verse 13. And the verse says, "He that answereth a matter before he heareth it, it is folly and shame unto him." Very interesting verse. Interesting verse. He that answereth a matter before he heareth it, it is folly and shame unto him. And so I'm the first to confess that I'm guilty of I'm guilty of folly, and I'm guilty of shame And I'm the first to tell you, I'm guilty of that because I've been in that situation before. I was quick to answer things before actually examining it. Now, I think I do have a different perspective now, having the experiences of judging a matter before hearing it. I think my approach is different today, and which is a very, very good thing. I like to hear things out. I like to listen. I like to sometimes you condemn. So like, oh, that is foolishness, right? And I remember that I've been told this, and this is something that you can probably try to test to see if it's the truth. But I'm told that truth, when it is presented, goes through three phases. And you probably heard me talk about this as well before. Truth, when it is presented, goes through three phases. Now, the first phase, when truth is presented, the first phase it goes through is that of denial. So when you hear certain things for the first time, the first response is nonsense. That's not true. Denial. You say, foolishness. Oh, not true. The second phase that it goes through is what they call violent opposition. So you're trying now to prove this person to be wrong, prove this idea to be wrong. And then the third phase that it goes through is widespread acceptance because it is self-evident. Very interesting. I'm not sure if you've heard that before, but I've heard it a long time. It's kind of stuck in my mind. Now, a few years ago, a documentary was released called Zeitgeist. I think it's a German word that I think it means the spirit of the times or the spirit of the ages or something. Anyway, there was a section in this documentary. It was just showing how that certain things that have happened is kind of just happening again. It's showing where like certain things are not necessarily true. In fact, there's a section in this documentary, and as I said a few years ago, there's a section in this documentary where they talked about in different cultures, in different in ancient times, and in different cultures, there's always been these great teachers who came about, who had 12 disciples, who eventually died and was raised on the third day, and so on. So it seemed to be a part of mythology, like this has always happened, and they were trying to suggest that even this idea, the present manifestation of that of those myths of the past is this Jesus with 12 disciples who died and was raised again. Anyway, I shared this testimony with a young man who I thought to be intelligent and so on. So he came to see me, and I said, "Hey, have you seen this?" So I sat him down around my desk. I said, "Take a look at this." And so I left him for a few moments, and I came back. And when I came back, he was alarmed. He was upset. He looked at me. He said, "Brother Howard, how do you explain this?" So I was surprised. And I said, "Explain what?" And he said, the information that I just, how do you explain this? I mean, do you see what we're in the same place because we are believing this myth about Jesus. And I was alarmed. No, I was amazed. And so I asked him, I asked him, I said, "Look, I watch the same thing that you just watched. You're watching the exact thing I watch. But it seems strange that I came with a different opinion and you have a different opinion. So we are now split on what we just saw." So what caused it? What caused it? Well, I saw what he saw. I didn't believe it. He saw it and he believed it. What is it that made me not believe, and what is it that caused him to believe? All right. Well, when I looked at what the documentary was saying, I recognized that he was talking about things that happened years ago, like hundreds of years ago in these different cultures. Okay. So I said, okay, I started just to research just what he said, and there was nothing to confirm any point he made of this great teacher who have arrived in the Persian Empire that had 12 disciples, or in whatever empire he mentioned. Okay, so I just looked at it. So I said to this young man, I said, you're sitting right there before a computer that is connected to the internet. I said, didn't you stop and even check to see if one of the things that he said was true? And then he calmed down and he said, yeah. He says, you're right. I said, man, you just accepted just because you, well, he said, man, it's a documentary. This was something that was prepared and released on the world. I said, doesn't falsehood come the same? Isn't the same way that it's done? So I was surprised that he never investigated, but he was ready to say this is garbage and nonsense. He was ready. Now, and I saw it, and I said, no, I have to investigate. So the point I made, in fact, I told Brother David what happened. I told Brother David how I shared this thing with him, and Brother David, he said, Howard, you don't do such things. Not everybody can manage certain things. And I mean, this is the truth. I mean, I never thought of it that way before. But he says, not everybody can manage certain revelation. So you have to be careful in sharing certain things that you probably need to either have to warn or to say to somebody, say, don't accept anything without you investigating it, right? And kind of what I'm seeing today in my own life, that I want to accept certain things based on my own evaluation and my own research. I must come to my own conclusions. So when I do this, if somebody should argue with me about it, then I should say, you do your own research and you will see. Because see, truth is not trying to invade you. No, it's all solid and factual, standing there and just waiting for you to discover it. So anyway, I believe honesty then is the best policy. In fact, look here. I have, and this is in no way, shape, or form trying to embarrass or to debunk the flat earthers. Okay, I'm saying that I looked at this issue of the flat earth. I listened to the theories. I've seen the experiments even. But since I'm alive, I have been experiencing certain things all my life. I just have certain questions. I have certain questions that I have to ask. There are just a few things, not many, which I've been asking and still have not gotten satisfactory answers to them. So, for example, like something as simple as this. How do you explain a day and a night? How do we have day and night? Okay, I'm sorry about that. How do you explain day and night? And honestly, the different perspectives that these people share, it just doesn't make sense, because they the explanation of the sun going far in the distance until you're not able to see it. It just doesn't make sense to me. And I'll tell you why. Because I live on an island, and when you live on an island, the reality the reality of the sun setting is something that you're accustomed to seeing. The reality of the sun setting is something that you see, and you definitely see the sun going down as it sits behind the water. As it goes down, you're able to see it disappear, and not that the sun goes in a far distance until you're not able to see any light. If you've ever been to an island like Jamaica or any other island, and you've ever gone to see the setting sun, then you'd recognize that this is not true what they have said. But so this is just one phenomenon where you actually see the sun disappear. This is just one phenomenon. But I've had other questions like, just tell me. I asked about somebody had said, no, there's no such thing as gravity. What there is density. So because there's density, my pen will drop at a certain speed, but if I had a feather or something lighter than my pen, they drop at different speed. But it's not true. If you have checked this out yourself, like I say, a feather would not fall at the same speed, and that's true because there's certain kind of resistance. But look here, just explain to me something like seasons. How do we have 4 seasons? Explain to me this idea about an equator. Explain to me jet winds. Explain to me. I've just asked these questions. Just explain how these things work in the model that you're telling me. Now, if you can explain this satisfactorily, then I just have to say this is really the truth. I mean, explain to me this idea of the equator, where above the equator in the northern hemisphere, according to the what's the name of this? The Coriolis effect. Certain things turn clockwise above and below in the southern hemisphere turns anti-clock. I mean, just explain certain things. And to this day, I've not been able just to have those questions satisfactorily answered. So anyway, I'm just mentioning this in passing so that you can understand that when I'm doing an evaluation, when I'm doing a search, doing a search for answers, I must come to satisfactory conclusions. All right. Now, it is almost like this. No one has ever told me ever in my life why Jesus had to die or why the sinner had to die. Okay. And so you end up with these things that God required blood and all of it. From who? Who did God require this from? And so, as I said, I've never understood that. And the best explanation that I've ever heard in my life up to this point was the revelation that came to Brother David Clayton. And for this reason, I can understand the plan of salvation that was established by God more perfectly than I've ever understood it before. And maybe myself, maybe my children has a better understanding of the plan of salvation than majority of the Christians in the world because of the revelation that has come. In fact, if you're unaware of this, I'm just going to put a plug in here for Brother David's book. The Good News is Better Than You Think. It has all those explanations I'm talking about. So if you have not gotten a copy yet, please make sure you check with Brother Lenny, write us here at the ministry, and we'll see how much we can do to get a copy in your hand. All right? Okay.
Amen.
So, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. I thought somebody was
I was just saying amen to you, Brother Howard. Just making support.
All right. Thank you, Brother Lenny. No problem. All right. So I made a decision to examine something that I've never investigated before, and that is the issue of the name of God. As I said, don't put blockage on you. Just I want you to hear me out. I'm not even going to be preaching. I'm just going to be sharing some thoughts with you, and for you to see what I've been looking at and how I've come to the conclusions that I've come to. It was of concern to me that that every religion on the earth has a God with a name, excepting the God of the Bible. Every religion that I know of on this earth has a God with a name, excepting the God of the Bible. In fact, if you ask the question, and I've done this many times, who is the God of the Bible? What are the responses if you ever asked that? I'll tell you the response that I've gotten from most people is that the name of their God is God. And that's it. And I can understand why, because that's how I grew up. I grew up in this way that the name of my God is God, but he's my Father. So I can say my Father. I can say he is the Most High. I can say he's the Almighty. What is his name? His name is God, right? That is how I grew up. Now, but I recognize that God is really a title. So who is the God of Islam? And the God of Islam actually has a name. The God of Islam is not God. The God of Islam is Allah. In fact, as I started to look at this issue, I found out that I've been lied to, and I was honestly deceived because I trusted the things I heard. I trusted it. Back in the days, in fact, let me give you a quick history. Back in the days of what we called historic Adventism, when that was big, John Osborne and all of these big names were historic Adventists. I heard an explanation given about the name of God that I accepted as the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And it actually came from a man, an older man back in those days, and his name was Dr. Ralph Lawson. I think he's dead, long ago. He wrote a book called The Word Became Flesh. So some of you who have your roots back then, you would have known who I'm talking about. Anyway, so this is what he actually said. This is what he said. He said that the name of God is, and he mentions YHWH, what theologians today call the tetragrammaton. Okay, now don't you ever think I'm going to go into that kind of thing to get you all messed up. Just follow me, all right? Just hear me out. Now, he said that these letters, which are consonants, these letters cannot be pronounced. And we know that consonants cannot be pronounced without, in our English language, without vowels. Okay, is that true? That's true. So these consonants cannot be pronounced except as in abbreviation, and that is passed on by word of mouth. And so far, I'm in agreement. You know, he gave examples like, let's say, DR in caps means doctor, but it doesn't say that, right? No, or DR in common letters it means drive, or MR or ST being saint or street, or well, but he's simply showing you that these letters does not pronounce that word, only that we would know the meaning or know what the meaning of the word is because somebody told us by word of mouth. That's the perspective he gave. And I accepted this to be true, that the only reason we came to these understanding was because we were told that is so, that this is so. These consonants actually means this, okay? And so I accepted this. So he went on to say that because the name of God was so holy that the people stopped calling the name for about 600 years, and the sound of the name was lost. All right, so this made sense because if consonants can't be pronounced, and the only way that consonants, you understand what consonants mean is by word of mouth, by somebody telling you what it means, and you pass it on to the next generation, to the next, to the next. And for 600 years, that compassed many generations that the name was not called. Obviously, the name was lost, and I accepted that. So what he said, Ralph Lawson said, was that they substituted the word Adonai, was what you see in your Bible as Lord in all caps. That they substituted the word Adonai for the name of God. So instead of them using the name, when they come to the name, they would say Adonai, and then they'll continue, and that is referring to the Lord. Now, so as I said, this is something that I have accepted until the moment that I decided to search this out for myself. So I've accepted that's and if you've heard me talk about this before, you have heard me mention that. All right. Now, the result of what I've looked at is what I'm hoping to share. What? I didn't realize my time was so far gone. Anyway, I'm hoping to share with you in the hope that you research it yourself and to see if these things are so. All right. It is true that in every language there are different pronunciations of names, right? But as a person who have traveled to many different countries with different languages, they all call me Howard. They all call me Howard with the same pronunciation, whether I was in Romania, whether I was in Hungary, whether I was in Serbia, whether I was in Germany, whether I was in Cuba, whether I was in the Czech Republic, they all called me Howard. The same pronunciation, Howard. Okay, so it is possible that they might write my name differently. It's possible that in speaking of me, they might speak of me in a different, using a different sound. Maybe, I don't know. But when they were talking to me or addressing me directly, when my translators are translating from me, they use my name. Okay? All right. Now, the same thing is true about the God of Islam. The God of Islam is Allah. And in every language that Allah is spoken of or talked about, it is the same. They talk about the God of the Muslims to be Allah. All right? So the name of Allah doesn't change regardless of the language, right? And it is the same truth for every God. All right. So here's a challenge that I came across some years ago, and this is something that you're probably familiar with as well, but maybe not in the way that I'm about to look at it. But this verse, there was a verse that I looked at that I didn't even recognize how loaded this verse was, and this verse is from the book of Proverbs, and I want to show you something that is said here in verse 4, Proverbs chapter 30. And verse 4. I want you to look at it with me here and see what it says. Because as I said, we have taken other meanings from the verse, but the reality of the verse is this. There's more to this than even that we had used the verse to address, which is the Trinitarian position, the fact that God had a son. But look at what it says here in verse 4. Who hath ascended up into heaven or descended? Who hath gathered the wind in his fist? Who had bound the waters in the garment? Who had established all the ends of the earth? You know who it is, right? But look at what Solomon does. He says, what is his name? And what is his son's name, if thou canst tell? Isn't that something strange? Isn't that something strange that this verse is actually there all along? I mean, I've been through this verse, I've used this verse, I've quoted this verse, but then going back to look at the verse, here's the challenge. Who has done all of these mighty acts? We know who it is. Then he asks, what is his name? And what is his son's name, if thou canst tell? All right, so that was something that was interesting, because for me, I understand that there was that common understanding in the Old Testament about who God is. They all knew the name of God. I mean, according to the commands of God, they were not to take his name in vain. You know that. They were not to take his name in vain. And what was that? That was not a title. That was a name. That was a name with a sound, right? So it says that they were not to take his name in vain. So what does that mean? What does it mean that you were not to take the name of the? You know how we were growing up and we were saying, we were told by our parents that you must not take the name of the Lord in vain. But you know what we made that to be? We must not say Jesus Christ, because sometimes look, something startling. And you said Jesus Christ, and you said, don't do that. Don't take the name of the Lord in vain. So we actually invented some names, like we'd say, instead of saying Jesus Christ, we'd say Jesus Crime or something like that. You know, Jamaicans know this, right? That this is a common thing here in Jamaica. But was that what God was saying, or was there something else that
Brother Howard, Brother Howard. Another name that we would use, he said, Jesus Peas.
right? Correct. Mm. And so we'll invent those names, as you know, Sister Anita, so that we don't commit that unpardonable sin of taking the name of the Lord in vain. So, but I realized it was not really talking about things like that, like saying the name in the way that we were told. No, it was more talking about blaspheming the name of God. In fact, there is a verse. That's one of those strange verses that it talks about in. I'll tell you, in Leviticus 24, and this is probably something that you've never looked at before, but Leviticus 24, Leviticus 24, I think maybe verse 16. Look at what it says here in verse 16, and I'm conscious of my time, and I want to speed, and I don't want to. And he that blasphemeth the name of the Lord, see, capital letter, he shall surely be put to death. Look at what he said. He that blasphemeth the name of, he shall surely be put to death. And all the congregation shall certainly stone him, as well as the stranger, as he that is born in the land. When he blasphemeth the name of the Lord, he shall be put to death. It's a very strange perspective, because it says, whether you're a stranger or you are born in the land, if you blaspheme the name of the Lord, and that's a name, I'm telling you, that what is that name? I mean, you and I, we grew up in this environment where we were kind of kept in the dark as to what this name is that they were referring to. So the notion that the Lord, that the name of the Lord was too holy for and to be called, and they stopped calling it, is not true. It cannot be substantiated. In fact, the records of the word demonstrates this clearly, that it is not so, right? So where did that come from? Now, let me say, I want to say something here, and I want to say it clearly. I believe that there was a plan afoot to remove that name, to remove the name of God, and to replace it with this Adonai, this Lord. And this plan was more recent, and just a couple of hundred years ago. Because if you check the records of the scriptures, let's say from the 12th century, maybe up to the 14th century, the name was there. This is interesting. The name was there. So why was it removed? The name was removed and replaced, and I believe it was a willful act. To get us to a certain place where we would not know the name. And so I expect you to research this, right? I expect you to research this. And and even though I know it may never happen, if you say this, say, research this, but I know it may never happen, because the curse of accepting knowledge and information from others has really led us, down a certain path. you know, and for that reason we are being deceived and bamboozled and eventually corrupted in our understanding. Anyway, it's kind of the syndrome of the people back in Moses' days. Moses, you talk to the Lord, and whatever the Lord tells you, you come and tell us, and all that the Lord says that we will do. But it's not necessarily true that we don't necessarily go with all that is said, and we don't research what we hear. Like the Bereans, when they heard Paul, they go home and check to see the things that Paul talked about was really so. And what did that mean? They knew the scriptures, or they had their scriptures. So when Paul talked, they would have seen it in the scripture, but they went to examine to see contextually and all of this, is it really so? All right, let's look at something else. Titles are not names. Is that true? Titles are not names. What is the name of God? Oh, the name of God is God. But is God a name or a title? God is a title, right? And that is why God, if you go to many different languages, you'll see that God is that word God in these different languages can be pronounced differently. The spellings are different, and this is something that you can do right now. You can do that. See, I just typed that into DuckDuckGo, and there you have all of these languages on the left, and you have the meaning, and these all of them are there. Like well, the German says Gott, the Romanian says Dumnezeu, whatever the pronunciation. So you can check that out yourself. But the issue I want you to see is that God is not a name. God is a title. Is Lord a name or a title? Didn't Sarah, the word of God says, call Abraham Lord? And isn't it also true that in some cultures today, they still use the name Lord, like Lord so-and, Lord Howard, Lord David, Lord somebody. So the word Lord is a title. Now, Paul made it clear that there are many gods. Have you read that before? 1 Corinthians 8. And there are many lords. Isn't that what he says? But he says Christians, or followers of, he never said Christians. He said, but to us. And when he's talking about us, he's talking about the children of God. To us, there is but one God. And he tells you who that one God is, the Father, who has a name. Is that right? And that this God has made Jesus to be Lord. All right, so there's one God and one Lord. So the titles God and Lord then are different in the different languages, and that can be easily proven, but not so with a name. All right. Of Abraham, it is said that he built altars wherever he went. He built altars, and he called upon the name of the Lord his God. And Abraham knew God by the name God Almighty. I'll look at that later on. And probably he proclaimed it wherever he went so that they would have known whom he served. Now, question, did the young man David know the name of God? Because here is the thing, and I realized I've been reading these stories to my children from they were young. I'm teaching them these things. I'm reading Bible stories to them. And so here's David, and David runs out and he stands before Goliath. And he said to him, thou comest unto me with a sword and with a spear and with a shield. But he said, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts. Is really that what David said? Did David actually say that? Or did David call the name of the Lord? Because the next part of the verse actually says, it comes in the name of the Lord and the God of the armies of Israel, whom thou, speaking of the Philistines, have defied. So, who was the God of the armies of Israel? Who was he? Was he the Lord? That's very strange, because the Philistines had Goliath, and to them he was their Lord at that time. So anyway, David knew. My point is, David knew the name of his God. One that you're familiar with, and this has always been something that I've thought about, because there's a song, I think, that that was made from it. It was Elijah on the Battle of Mount Carmel. I'm sorry. Did Elijah not declare the name of his God? Did he not speak the name of his God? Remember, he said, if Baal be God, we should worship him. And if who is God? See, again, you see this. Then if the Lord be God, so what was it? Was it Baal versus the Lord? But wasn't Baal the Lord of the Philistines? Ahab's, Jezebel's priests and all of that? Wasn't Baal the name their Lord as well? So what was Elijah saying? What was he saying? So in fact, here's a verse. Here's a verse. And let me I'm conscious of this time. I'm tempted to turn it off. But I'm going to ask you for a couple of extra minutes today. So let me just look at this verse, this passage in Jeremiah. Very interesting passage in Jeremiah 23. I've never seen this passage before. And so when I looked at it recently, it was an interesting passage for sure. Let's start in verse 26, Jeremiah 23 and verse 26. And I want you to see something that was said here by the prophet Jeremiah. Jeremiah 23 and verse 26. Look at what it says here. How long shall this be in the heart of the prophets that prophesy lies? Yea, they are prophets of the deceit of their own heart. Look at what it says next. Which think to cause my people to forget my name by their dreams which they tell every man to his neighbor, as their fathers have forgotten my name for Baal. Very interesting verse that I actually never saw before. But look at what he says, that Jeremiah says that their fathers have forgotten the name of God for Baal. And when you think about this, if you examine the reign of Ahab and Jezebel, the daughter of this Zagonian priest, if you examine what happened, this is really what was taking place in Israel. In so much so that the prophets of God, those remember when Elijah told God he was the only one left? It was not true, because Obadiah knew of certain amounts that were in the caves hiding. So what does that tell you? If these men of God who knew the name of God were in hiding, it was clear that the name of God was forgotten. It was clear that what they were doing was trying to erase the name of God. So when Elijah met them on Mount Carmel, he was bringing back to these people's mind, he was bringing back to them the fact that God, the Lord, he is God. What did I do? Okay, all right.
While you're searching, Howard, here's one other verse too that talks about the name of the Lord is a strong tower, and the righteous run into it.
I have that one to brother Wayne, but yeah, it's true. Proverbs 18 and verse 10. It says that the name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous run into it and is safe. So I'm just saying there is a perspective that I want you to see, and God allowed Elijah to be in that place that he would reignite this reality in the heart of these people, that they will recognize, look, if Baal is God, and how did they prove it? The God that answers by fire. And he proved it. If Baal be God, serve him. And if the Lord, and we're going to be getting down to that. In fact, here's an interesting verse that I found in Exodus. In Exodus 23, I've never seen this verse before. Exodus 23, God gave a command, would we say? I've never seen this one before, but look at what it says here. And I'm expecting that the verses that I'm using, you're taking them down, you're going to be examining them, and like the Bereans, you're going to check them out contextually and make sure that what I'm saying makes sense. And in all things I have said unto you, be circumspect. This is Moses telling them what God says. And in all things that I have said unto you, be circumspect, and make not mention of the name of other gods, neither let it be heard out of thy mouth. Never read that before. Is that true? That God actually says you were not even supposed to call the name of other gods out of your mouth? So what about his name? It was his name that they were to call. Isn't that true? What you call this, the Shema, the great Shema of the Old Testament? Is that the great Shema is that Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one. Have you read that before? The Lord our God is one Lord. But who is he? That is the question. Who is he, Lord? It was almost like when Jesus healed that man, and he came back and he said, and he mentioned to him about his healing, and he said, and who healed him, and he said, who is he, Lord, that I may worship him? Have you read that before? We'll probably look at that next week. So what then? Here's where we come down. What then is the name of God? What is the name of God? I think that's kind of where we kind of say, all right, Brother Hall, you've said enough now. What is the name of God? And I hope that I've established enough to show you that one, God has a name. Two, that God's name, his name is known. And three, that his children are expected to know his name, and in order that we might be witnesses unto him. Do we agree? All right. We spoke earlier about this this YHWH called the tetragrammaton, right? And what I've found is this is interesting when you're searching for certain things, and you need to get answers to certain things, that you have to look in places that you've never looked, or you've never examined this subject before. So it's always good for you to do this, because the historical records actually shows that when you look at this YHWH, that this word, this letter W, was not named or coined until later on, right? In fact, you can do your own researches on this, and what you'll find is that there was actually a letter in the alphabet which is two U's, U and U beside each other, U and U beside each other, and this letter W was actually replaced that letter. Do you actually know what the letter means? That W is actually meaning W. It's really what it means. I didn't even know that, but anyway, it made sense that that letter W wasn't there, and I understood that there were some who wanted to just make a word, so they kind of placed two vowels in the YHWH to get a sound, and so they got the sound Yahweh for pronunciations. Okay, but interestingly, there are a few verses in the Bible that sheds light on the name of God. There are a few verses that I know, that sheds light on the name of God. And in fact, I'm just going to go to these verses, and I should be done in less than 5 minutes. All right. So let's just do this quickly now as we look at these different verses here. And in fact, I mentioned to you how that Abraham, when he built altars, he called upon the name of God the Almighty, and I'll show you why. Because God, in speaking to Moses, said some things that that's interesting. Look at what he said here in Exodus chapter 6. Look at this in Exodus chapter 6. God speaking to Moses, and here's what he said to Moses. He said, Moses, I am the Lord. Look at verse 2. And God spake unto Moses and said unto him, I am the Lord. And again, you see that big L-O-R-D. So it's telling you clearly, he spake his name. Look at what he says next in verse 3. And I appeared unto Abraham and unto Isaac and unto Jacob. But look at what happened here. By the name of God Almighty. I appeared unto them by the name of God Almighty. But by my name, Jehovah, was I not known to them. Right there. My name, Jehovah, was I not known to them. Now, I'm showing you something that I recognize that, have you ever seen things being lost in plain sight? I heard somebody talking more recently about having on his glasses and searching for his glasses, or having his keys in his hand and searching for the keys, right? But I want you to see that when you look at this, you recognize the word, why did God allow this to happen? And not just in one place, as I'll show you, not just in one place. In fact, let's go over to the book of Psalm and look at two instances here in Psalm. In fact, I'll take one before the other. I'll go to Psalms 83 first, and I want you to see something said here. In Psalms 83, I'm going to take a couple of verses, maybe starting in verse 16. Look at what he says. The psalmist writing, fill their faces with shame that they may seek thy name, O Lord. And that Lord is referring to the name of God. All right. Let them be confounded and troubled forever. Yea, let them be put to shame and perish, that men may know that thou, whose name alone is Jehovah, art the Most High over all the earth. Very interesting. Let's go up to chapter 68. It's the same book, chapter 68, and there's a shortened form dimension of this name, and it is here in verse 4, 68 and verse 4. Sing unto God, sing praises unto his name, extol him that rideth upon the heavens by his name, Jah, and rejoice before him. And rejoice before him. Let me take the next two, and I'm hoping that you're writing these down. Isaiah chapter 12 and verse 2 says something very similar. Look at what it says. But God is my salvation. I will trust and not be afraid. For the Lord Jehovah is my strength and my song. He also is become my salvation. Let's go down to chapter 26 and look at verse 4. Trust ye in the Lord forever. For in the name of Jehovah is everlasting strength. Now, what am I saying by this? I'm bringing a point out, and I hope that this point sticks. And it is this: if you've ever researched the English language, if you've ever looked at it and to see the different transitions that it went through to get to where it is today, again, do your own research. You would have found out this, that the letter J was one of the last letters to be added to the English language. In fact, the letter J came out in the 1500s. I think there are some places I checked where it says it was not until 1604 that it was first written, right? The letter J. Now, the letter J, the sound, and if you do research, you'll find the person who actually came up with this letter and the sound of the letter, okay? Now, since God existed long before the 1500s, it is obvious that the letter J, the sound J, does not belong to the name of God. In fact, the letters I and Y, as very were the letters used in different translations, which would have given you the words Jehovah or Yah as the name of God. Consequently, now finally, what I heard from Ralph Lawson was not the truth. It was not the truth. The name of God is not lost. It was simply just a plan to keep it a secret, and to and even today, you'll recognize that this is really what happened. But here's something I've found to be very interesting. In my research, I found that the Jews actually has a ceremony that is performed every 7 years, and in this ceremony, the name of God is passed on from one rabbi to another, from the reigning rabbi to the one that is to succeed. And if you're ever, when you do your research, here's something that you'll find, that the pronunciation. In fact, I was listening to somebody who was doing some research in the Vatican, and he found, well, he said there was a box. He said that was called a miscellaneous box, and he found a page in there which was actually one of the pages of Matthew, because history shows that Matthew was actually written in Hebrew, right? And it's probably possible that other books of the New Testament as well. But anyway, he said that what he found when this idea of when referring to the name of God is that the name of God was written in the same way, Jehovah, and pronounced the same way, because this was a rabbi that was actually talking about the pronunciation of the name. It was pronounced in this way, Jehovah, just removing the J for the Y or the I. So anyway, I just want you to look at this idea, and in my research is really what I've come up with, because this is the reality, that who is the name of your God? Who is God? Who is the God of the Bible? I can answer from my research that the God of the Bible is Jehovah. That's his name. That's the name of the God of the Bible, Jehovah, and that is how I've come to this understanding. Hopefully next week we can delve a little more into the New Testament. Maybe we'll look at the idea of Jesus and see if really this is so, right? Because I mean, why is this necessary? Well, I find it for myself that it is, because I've never been able to place a name on God, except to say he is God, or he's my Father, he's the Most High, all of that. But what is his name? What is his name? Solomon asked, if thou canst tell. So anyway, let me try to just wrap things up here, and hoping that the idea of this secret that has been guarded by lies will be something that you can investigate to see, is this really a secret, or is there a truth that there is the name of God that the righteous can run into, the name of God that you can run into it and you know that you are safe. I once said that I don't need to know. I once said that I never needed to know the name of my father. I just said this foolish thing, and it was accepted by many people that what was necessary was to know that he is my daddy. Okay, so if somebody said, "What's the name of your father?" I said, "Daddy." Is that my name? Is that my daddy's name? No, that's a title that I use to address him. It's a title of endearment, right? But is that his name? No, my daddy's name is Vincent. That's his name. And I had to know it was his name. Vincent is his name. So if I'm going to say, look at Elijah, I'm thinking, if Elijah is there on Mount Carmel and he says, if Baal be God, serve him. But if Jehovah is God, serve him. So we can understand now, when I look at that passage, I realize this is what it's saying, that Jehovah, he is God. Jehovah, you remember when the people started singing, Jehovah, they were saying, the Lord, he is God. The Lord, he is God. What were they saying? Jehovah, he is God. Jehovah, he is God. And I hope that this is something that will help you to get that closer connection as a family. Remember, we're the family of God, extended from heaven unto earth, that we'll be able to recognize and to identify and to profess and confess and declare to the world who our God is. Thank you so much for your time and company today. And I'm sorry that I did go over a couple of minutes there, maybe 10, 12 minutes. So really appreciate your time today. And I hope that the things that we're able to look at today will be something that you will think about. And in thinking about it, you will come to that understanding of who the name of your God is. Brother, do you have a point?
Yeah.
After which, brother Raymond, Sister Bobby, and then Brother Sam.
Yeah. Well, you say that this study was for your own personal benefit, and from that perspective, I don't have any problem with it. Although when you present it publicly like this, you give the impression that you are presenting it for everybody's benefit. So I have to comment that you know, I've spoken about this in the past, and you know, my position is that, do we contend for a name or for a pronunciation?
Yeah.
That's my contention from the beginning. Are we contending for a name or for a pronunciation? Because in most of the presentations I've heard, and it seemed to be your emphasis too, we emphasize the sound rather than the meaning of the sound. And I'm one who believes that the sound is not the most important thing; it's the meaning behind the name. So the thing is, Howard, there is a difference between, there's a thin line between something that is, when somebody who is, Brother Sam, you're making a lot of noise. Could you mute for a moment, please? Thank you. Right, there's a difference between there's a thin line between legalism and the spirit of something. And sometimes if you go too much in one direction, even though it seems to be in the cause of what is true, it steps into legalism. Because if you say that what is important is the sound we make when we speak of God instead of what we mean, then in my opinion, we're emphasizing the wrong thing. The thing is, in listening to you, I'm not sure if you're saying we should pronounce it this way, or I don't think you're emphasizing the meaning, because you actually said something contrary to that. So if you are emphasizing the sound, how we pronounce the name, I think if you do that for yourself, it's good. But if to suggest that it's something that we do for everybody, to me that would be like promoting legalism. So that's the comment I'd like to make.
Okay, so let me just say something about David. I just want to say,
somebody has making noise. The mic.
Just mute for me, right, David. Okay. Remember, my point is, what is the name of the God of the Bible? If I ask my children what is the name of God, they would have said God. I've asked many people what is the name of the God of the Bible, and they say God. That's not the name of the God of the Bible. The name of the God of the Bible has a name, not a title. Because I said the God of Islam has a name. the God of Hinduism has many names. The gods of Buddhism has many names. But I'm saying, does the God of the Bible have a name? And does the Bible tell you clearly what is the name of the God of the Bible? In the same way, the Son of God has a name. We'll probably look at that next week. But what if you call me by a name that does not refer to me? What if you call me by another sound that doesn't? What do I need to do? Just make sure that you're talking to me. So you say, so let's say you say, hey, John, are you talking to me?
Well,
And if you
know,
say, yes, I'm talking to you, then I would have said, that's not my name. This is my name. So I'm simply saying God has a name. For me, that is important that I understand that God is a name. The Bible states what his name is. So I don't know that it would be legalism to state what the Bible says. I'm not sure that could be legalism. Or if I say the name, does it mean that I'm a legalist? If I say, I thank you, Jehovah, for this, what you have done for me, does that mean I'm a legalist? I don't see it that way, which is good, because I've been saying it's an opinion. It's your opinion versus my opinion. It's not saying, and if I feel that this is how I should be, you might call me a legalist. That's all right. I just know where I'm at in terms of my relationship. And I hope you understand that, Brother David.
You say Jehovah. Some people here say some people here say Yahweh.
So you have heard people say different things.
Some people say Yahweh. Some say Jehovah. If you say there's nobody who is called Jehovah but the God of the Bible. There's nobody who is called Yahweh but the God of the Bible. And if you say Jehovah, it's the same person. It's just a different pronunciation of the same person. Nobody else is called by any of those titles.
So it's just strange that we don't call the names. Is that one of the strange things that we don't do it?
No, sometimes we say Jehovah. Sometimes we say Yahweh. Somebody else might say Jehovah. So are we contending for a sound?
Right. So my perspective then is whether it is a sound, what the important thing is who you're addressing, right? Whether it's a sound, but I mean, I don't see this as legalism. In fact, you might say I'm a legalist to say the name if I decide to use the name. But in myself, I'm not being a legalist.
No, it's not whether you use a name. For you to use a name, sometimes I say Yahweh. Sister Marcia might say, Sister Diane might say something. It's is if we teach that you have to use a certain sound, I find that is legalism.
All right. So one of the good things is that I never said that this is something that you must do. I simply shared a research that I looked at for myself that I've never looked at before, that I've actually condemned people without ever examining it. And just by examining it, I recognize that I've done wrong. I've been involved in folly and shame and shame because I've never examined it. But I've examined it, and I've just shared my examination to say, this is what I've found, and this is really, that's it. I mean, it's left up to each person to decide whether or not it was even something that they were aware of. I mean, I realize most people, most Christians today, they are not even aware of the name of the God of the Bible. That's kind of the perspective.